What could be the song? Where begin again? Who could meet us there? Where might we begin? From the shadows climb, rise to sing again. Where could be the joy? How do we begin? Never our despair, never the least of us, never turn away, never hide your face. Ordinary boy, only all of us, free us from our fear.
All right, so this is a little bit of slice about me and where I came from and who I am and where I'm going. The kings and queens, majesty, possibilities, the inheritors of beauty, bodies naturally fit, living off the fruits of creation, right? I'm a drummer. I love that the drums came from Africa and the struggle of slavery. Property. Wow. Laws applied to humans. Very degrading. Loss of heritage, ideas, drums. Again, move a little forward. Jim Crow. Oof. Racist theatrical character depicted us. I think the picture says enough right there. That's my grandfather and my grandmother. 1930s, he was sentenced to death for allegedly killing a white man's mule, and he fled to the Bronx by himself, leaving my family, his wife, and my dad. This is part of my legacy. I grew up with a lot of sweetness, a lot of love, a lot of hope. Great foundation for my childhood, right here on the east side of Austin, Texas. I didn't play my first gig across I-35 until I was about 15 years old. By the time I was 17, my girlfriend at that time was sexually assaulted in my vehicle. And when I was taken down to the cops, they accused me of doing it. It's Austin, Texas, 1989. Blew my mind. A lot of self-doubt at that point in my life. I had no way to go. Black folks didn't do therapy. What are you talking about? No way to know how I was supposed to live my life. My self-esteem was at an all-time low at that point in my life. All those possibilities, the beauty of where I came from, the confidence that I had as a young man was beginning to fail. But as creation had it in store for me, I had a lot of opportunities to do a lot of traveling. Got a chance to play with Shaka Khan, Janet Jackson, Jody Watley, Sheena Easton, and the list goes on and on. But it didn't help that I was having mental health issues. You know, poor decisions, self-doubt. Failed marriage. Lost confidence. Losing gigs, the thing that I loved, didn't make any sense to me. I didn't know how I was going to get out of this. I had still not really connected the dots of the earlier part of my life when I was 17. Those racist beliefs that put their vitriol inside of me. It became very, very difficult for me to define myself and to embrace the change, even in Austin, Texas. This represents the forest that I was in. I had to break through. I had to find a way to challenge myself spiritually, emotionally, to be whole, to be someone who was out of the darkness. See how that's kind of fuzzy? That was what my life was like, even though I was touring the world, Japan, Canada, South America, Africa, illness. All that toxicity that was poured into my life was nothing but pain, bacterial infections, hospitalized 5 times in 2 years. I still had no clue at what had happened to me had affected me in the way that it did. This picture signifies what I felt like at that point. My family, my mother dying, my father having strokes and me taking care of him. Not unlike any other person, it doesn't make me more special than any of you, but I was able to somehow get through that spiritually and see myself as someone who could smile behind the drums and bring joy. Leaving a legacy. My son and my daughter. Beautiful, aren't they? Also, what's great about what I've learned is that I get a chance to share that with the youth. Now, I'm the old guy in the band, which is funny. But mentorship has become something that's very dear to me, bringing my knowledge to those that are trying to make a way for themselves. This is opportunity for me to share all the love that I've learned to give myself that I did not know that I was able to give myself at a younger age. But I can express those things right now, right here with you. Thank you so much.
So my name is Jane Claire Hervey. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, and I have always been an odd combination of loud and sarcastic and sweet, as evidenced by this unprompted pose for a family photo in 1995. I was born in Harlingen, Texas, and raised in Rio Hondo, Texas, the latter of which is only occupied by about 2,000 people, really small farming town. I grew up in a zoo called Gladys Porter, if anybody knows what that is. It's the zoo where Harambe was born. You know Harambe? This is my zoo dad, Jerry. He got a lot of news. He was in the news for, he raised Harambe. Anyway, that's where I'm from. I'm really interested in biology and ecology. Rio Hondo is a Catholic farming town, so I spent a lot of my time growing up in rodeo pageants. Studying and singing backup in country bands. I was my town's go-to Star Spangled Banner singer, and it's still my favorite song to this day. At the time, I just wanted to be a musician and write songs, but my parents forced me to go to college, and they're both Aggies, so I picked UT out of spite, which is how I got here. And the day I was supposed to move into my dorm, I tried out for The Voice instead and got through a few rounds, and that was me with my little voice audition card. My college years here were pretty tough, though, and confusing. I decided to study journalism, and navigating the nuances of urban Texas being from a really small conservative town was difficult. I was shedding old ideologies and stepping into who I was, and by the time I had graduated, my experience in media making, music making, and viral news media led me to get on that stool you saw on the last slide and start this little thing called Boss Babes ATX. Yeah. So I became obsessed with what could happen if we told honest and authentic stories that put women and marginalized genders in positions of power. And I wanted to know what that could look like if we also shared resources and knowledge and education and money with those groups as well. What would that change within our creative industries? What could that mean for our cultures and our communities? And Boss Babes ATX was a way for me to start answering those questions. It started with a little meetup in 2015 with a few friends. We invited a few people from our networks, and surprisingly, 300 people showed up. I was astonished. And from there, the mission really snowballed. We launched a festival in 2016 called Babes Fest to amplify women musicians, filmmakers, and comedians. We saw hundreds of more guests, and the response was overwhelming. I was answering thousands of emails per week. What is this? What is it gonna do? Are you gonna talk to Governor Abbott? How is this gonna work? And I was 21 and freaking out. The world was ahead of me, it seemed. And the network just slowly grew into something much larger than a network. Beyond our meetups and festivals, we were facilitating dialogues and conversations about everything from feminism to finance. We launched a market called Crafter to support women and non-binary business owners. And for the first one, we just put it up in a month at Fair Market, and 2,000 people in Austin showed up. Beyond that, in response to Trump being elected in 2016, I launched this thing called State of the Uterus, which is a full-on Studio 54 energy kind of party about reproductive health and its intersections. I've worn like a balloon dress at it. Last year I was a cheetah girl. We raise about 10K a year. And obviously, with this kind of work, things started to gain steam and receive a little more attention. Not only did we have thousands of people attending events, but the hate mail kept coming and coming and coming and coming and coming. This one's my favorite. And I learned how to have thick skin, which I think as a creative we all do. I was working 30 plus hours a week on the project full time on top of mitigating kind of the public nuances of it. So in 2017, after 2 years of doing the damn thing, I decided I personally had to make some moves as well. It was time to give the thing a real shot. I had moved from journalism into design. I was working at a design studio, and I decided to quit full time at the end of 2017. I wanted to make the nonprofit sustainable. I wanted to give the thousands of people coming out to our events the attention that they deserved, but also the work that I was doing, the attention it deserved, the work that my peers were doing, the attention it deserved. So I buckled down in 2017. I had thankfully garnered some savings, and I was committed to raise our annual revenue. We had seen like 70K that year, and it was all going out in expenses. I was committed to do 400,000 plus within 5 years. So that was 2 years ago. At that point, we had about 15,000 people attending our programs, and I was like, we have to have staff, we need infrastructure, and we need real support in order to do what we're doing. Now, it's 2019, and I work at the nonprofit part-time. I have one part-time staffer who works with me. We have a few contractors. We have a team of 13 committee members. We have 4 board members and a network of 200 volunteers per year. We provide exhibition, commission, and educational opportunities to 1,500 plus women and non-binary creatives, entrepreneurs, and leaders per year. And we produce 10 programs every year that 20,000 plus people attend. I haven't reached that 400K goal yet, but y'all, we're getting to 250K this year, and I will say it feels freaking good. And as for me, as a creative, as someone who makes music, as someone who's writing, I'm trying to pursue my fullest creative life and work with the constraints and the barriers and have like a go-getter attitude with what comes my way. So I hustle with freelance and consulting, and I've made time to settle back into my music again, and I released my first project this year. I've become a better person, a better leader, and a better creative because I've seen the power of community and the power of standing up for what you believe in even when it's hard. And I just want to remind you that this is the land of the free, but it's the home of the babes. Thank you.
This is what it's all about, everybody. So this was me over 20 years ago, but this was really the beginning for me of discovering the meaning of life. And I was doing a great job of it, but I had been traveling around Europe and was trying to discover myself. I went back to university for my senior year of college, and I was supposed to go to medical school after that. The reason I said I was going to medical school is to help people, but I realized as I was saying this to people, I'd never actually helped anybody before. And so I was like, am I full of shit? So then this led to a series of 3 questions. The first one being, what does it actually feel like to help people? To dedicate your life, dedicate your time to serving others. I had always applied to the Boys and Girls Club, United Way, when I was in college, but other things like riding bulls naked took priority. The second question I was asking myself was, what do I believe in, or who do I believe in? I grew up in polarizing households. My parents divorced when I was really young. One family was really had no faith belief, whatever, and the other one was a devout Christian household. But what did I believe in? And the third question was, who would I be if you dropped me in the middle of nowhere? Am I who I am because it's intrinsically who I was meant to be? Or am I being who I am because of what society says, or my family says, or my friends' circle says? And so those 3 questions, with this fire in my heart, led me at the end of my senior year to buy a one-way ticket and move to Africa, and to move to Kenya. No plan. My family was freaking out. I had never been on the continent before, but I wanted to go figure out those 3 questions. Very rarely, I think, in life can you boil your life down to one day, one moment. But this first time I ever went to this town called Mai Mahiu, which is where Ubuntu Life does all of its work, changed my life forever. It was the first time. I grew up in Texas, middle-class kid, never for want. But this visit down there was the first time I ever saw poverty for the first time, like true pain-ripping poverty. I met this guy, Jeremiah. We would have lunch every Thursday. We did that for a year. And this guy was serving an orphanage for 140 kids, a local pastor in the area, earning $50 a month. $50 a month. This guy's heart was amazing, and I wanted to be closer to him. I wanted to learn more from him. The biggest thing I learned from those lunches was the power of listening. Listening to him, listening to myself, listening to the culture, the newness of Africa and everything it had to offer me. And there was no social media, there was no iPhones, so every night, and I had no running water, it was just silence, and I learned the power of listening. After that, I was like, I have to go back, and I want to get deeper into what I believe in, so I attended this Bible college in the middle of nowhere in Montana just because I wanted to study the Bible for myself and figure out what I believed in, and I was able to integrate Africa in my experience while I was there. While I was there, this quote from Viktor Frankl, "What is to give light must also endure burning." And I realized what my real life's calling was to continue this discovery of who God is, where do I fit in, and I do love helping people. How do I make a life of this? And I realized I was going to have to live a life of discomfort. If I was going to be myself in front of the world, it was going to be a life of discomfort. And so Ubuntu Life was officially born. I led my first team. It was the first time I had run really anything as an adult, and we weren't quite sure what was going to happen, but we knew we were committed to serving the marginalized. At that same time, this photo makes me laugh, but at the same time, I ended up following this passion of what do I believe in all the way through to becoming an Episcopal priest, and served in the church for a number of years, but really realized I wasn't the best fit in the church. My calling was outward into the world. And so I went back to Africa, and we started the first school for children with special needs. I really wanted to serve the most marginalized, and people with special needs, especially in parts of Africa, are on the margins of the margins. At the same time, we started working with the mothers of these children, and the mothers really educated us that these are badass women. They don't want handouts. Handouts don't solve real problems. Handshakes, seeing each other eye to eye, seeing each other as equals, that we're in this together, and they wanted to learn how to sew, their traditional work of beadwork. They wanted to take that into the world, and so we started our own company with Ubuntu Life. We started our first enterprise. But how do you get your products to a market? Well, you come back to Austin, you pretend to be a Hey K Cupcake delivery guy, and you go into a board meeting at Whole Foods Market, that's how the fuck you get to the market. And so we got the attention of Whole Foods. That ended up leading our products getting into every Whole Foods market in the country. It also led 100 Whole Foods employees to come to Kenya over a 2-year period and build the first espresso cafe and bakery in the Rift Valley region where we work. This was a transformational time for me with my background as a priest and a nonprofit. I didn't quite know the power of business. I always saw kind of business as bad, crony capitalism. But then I was, through Whole Foods, discovered conscious capitalism and the ability to have the heart of a nonprofit and live your love loud, but also have the muscle of a business. And so we went back and we scaled up the business, and we went from reusable canvas coffee sleeves to making shoes, which I'm sporting tonight, bracelets, and we opened up that partnership with American Eagle Outfitters, with Zazzle, doing shoes with Disney, and just in ways that we never imagined. And are now in the process of actually transitioning the enterprise side into a business, a for-profit business. And it's interesting journeys where they take you, no matter, this route and going to Africa, becoming a priest, starting a nonprofit, scaling a business. It's all about love. It's about listening to your heart, listening to God, listening to your community. And what Ubuntu means is I am because we are, how we're all connected. And so PechaKucha, thanks for having me. To learn more, please check us out at ubuntu.life. Thank you.
So as long as humans have been constructing shelter, we've been trying to find easier ways to do this. A couple examples of proto-modular construction here. On the left-hand side, a Neolithic shelter, and on the right, a panelized Roman fort that dates from the time of Augustus. In my discipline, architects have been exploring the possibilities of pre-assembled construction for at least a century. A couple of my favorites here, Jean Prouvé's Maison Tropicale on the left, and Bucky Fuller's Dymaxion House on the right. Both of these are very elegant solutions, but ultimately I think they failed because of their disregard for market forces. But at the same time in architecture, there's a general emphasis on attainability. It was a common theme then. And one of my favorite and few successful examples of this was Joseph Eichler's projects he did in California in the 50s and 60s. Eichler looked to afford the modern family with all of the advantages of this new architecture. Inspired by these populist efforts, my firm was founded in 2001 with the goal of providing affordable architecture to a broad cross-section of the population. Our first project ended up on Dwell magazine, and we started getting calls from all around the country to do projects, but I was really frustrated because we couldn't execute elsewhere what we could here in Austin. And so that led us to pursue modular, and I'm going to talk very quickly about what I mean by that, because that term can mean a part like a 2x4, a component like a truss, or a fully 80-90% complete unit at the factory, and that's what I'm talking about when we talk about modular. So fortunately for us, there was an existing infrastructure of modular around the country. There were manufacturing facilities, transport companies, crane companies, set crews. They were mostly doing low-cost, conventional homes, but we reached out to them to see if any of them were crazy enough to work with us. So what we did, the initial model that we set up, we wanted to accomplish two things. We wanted to leverage the advantages of the factory environment, but we also wanted to maintain some semblance of design flexibility. So we accomplished this through designing a kit of parts. We had to understand the limitations of the factory environment and put together these parts that could be assembled in a variety of ways. And so for about 4 or 5 years, we executed a series of custom homes. This is a house we did in Marfa, Texas. We worked with several different manufacturers. They were all in Texas. This house was built on precast concrete slabs. But pretty quickly, we started to realize, within a few years, we started to realize the limitations, some of the flaws of our underlying assumptions. Even the limited customization that we wanted to provide was fighting against the economies of scale of the factory environment. So imagine a widget factory that had to build a new widget every time they did one. So we started to reach out to these manufacturers and talk to them about what we could do to execute this. And the common refrain we heard from them was we had to avoid customization and we had to go back to the drawing board and take 6 to 8 years of feedback and an email list of about 7,000 people and decide what we were going to put out in the market. And so what we did, we kind of went to the Henry Ford model. You can have whatever color you want as long as it's black. So we narrowed our floor plan selection down to a dozen houses that ranged in size from 550 to 2,300 square feet, and we redesigned our website to reflect these offerings. About the same time, we started to be presented with several opportunities to explore increased density with modular construction. This is a 4-unit project that we recently finished in the Echo Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. Utilizes the small lot ordinance in LA. And we're able to get 4 townhouses on a lot that used to have a single house. On the other end of that scale spectrum, one of the opportunities I'm most excited about is the granny flat, or the ADU, and pictured here is our version of the Texas Dog Trot with 2 mods and a screened-in porch in the middle. These little buildings are great for vacation homes, rental units, infill projects, and they're becoming more widely encouraged around the country. We've recently been exploring an alternative senior model we're in the process of prototyping it. With 70 million baby boomers coming to retirement age in the next 20 years, we feel that a garden-style environment like this will be much more attractive to them than the current options. The project that I'm probably most excited about and brings together all of our interests as a design firm is this 100% affordable housing project we're doing with the Chestnut Neighborhood Group in East Austin. It would be one of the first projects to utilize the affordability unlocked ordinance that was recently passed in Austin, and all 40 of the units would be affordable housing. One of the fun prototypes that we're working on that have come through these new explorations are hospitality projects. And so we've been doing short-term rental and hotel projects, and they tend to either be infill projects like the project on the left or more rural destination projects like the project on the right. Right now, about half of our projects are in Los Angeles, and they're all collaborations with the same project team, and they range in size from single-family homes to 5 and 7 unit projects. This is a 7-unit project overlooking Echo Park Lake, and we're also working on a large brownfield project in Ventura, and that's what you see here. This is our most ambitious project to date. This is a 6-acre, 150,000 square foot project in Ventura, California. The project's going to provide 20% of the units as affordable housing, and we're targeting an emerald rating for sustainability on the project. The project's creating a dense, walkable neighborhood in what used to be an industrial zone. And then back here in Austin, this is one of our first mixed-use modular projects at MLK and Leona, which we set earlier this year. We developed, designed, and are acting as a general contractor on it. We're able to put 17 beautifully designed townhouses around a courtyard where we used to have 4 rundown houses. For me, this project brings together our founding principles in architecture firm, summarized in the Vitruvian notion of firmness, commodity, and delight. While all these projects may be modest in their scale, when the requisite attention is paid to these moments, we can build ourselves a sustainable and enjoyable city. Thank you.
My name is Nikki Vaughn, and this is me and my mom. She said I came out of the womb entertaining and charming people. I was precocious, and I was extroverted, and I danced and sung all the goddamn time. I would put on little shows for her and my dad as birthday gifts and anniversary gifts. I was quite the handful. This was my favorite person. I remember when I heard her the first time, and it was on Soul Train, and I heard, "Step and move your hips with a feeling from side to side. Sit yourself down in your car and take a ride." And I thought, I want to do that shit. And so it was no surprise that I found myself on stage. This is the first group I was in. It was an all-female a cappella group. And as you can see, I am the only black person. That began a host of me being in groups where I was the only black person. Shitty cover bands, burlesque shows, until I found this person. That is a Lotta Boutte. And I saw her for the first time and I thought, that's it. I want to be black, unapologetic, fat as fuck, sing, dance, cuss, all of it. Surely there's got to be other women that want to do that too. And then I took it a step further and I saw this piece of trash. Now, never mind the fact that there is no burlesque in the movie Burlesque. The thing that upset me about it is that there are also no black people. I was like, surely there has to be fat black girls that also want to dance in skimpy clothing, so I'm gonna find them. And Fat Bottom Cabaret was born. Now, my first show, I called in every single favor from every single friend ever. They were sweeping the floor, they were taking clothes off, they were picking up drawers, they were doing all of the things. I had finally found 4 girls that I talked into dancing on stage, half naked, with all of their fat hanging out, and I was ecstatic. There we are. That is the first time I was on stage and I sang and danced. Now, as these creative things happen, there was a little bit of an issue because, too many chiefs in the kitchen and whatever that damn phrase is. But so we had to take a break because I wasn't sure what I wanted. We came back with a vengeance. We couldn't find anybody to let us on their stages because nobody could understand why you want fat girls with no clothes on stage. So we got onto the burlesque festival circuit. This was our first festival. When we went to that festival in San Antonio, we got a crazy following from that. We also won our first award. I have never been so happy to get a piece of wood with a fake taco on it, because what it meant was that I was right. People wanted to see these bodies. They wanted to see themselves in the world, and this was proof of that. So we kept going. We kept going to festivals, kept signing up for festivals. This was us at the Texas Burlesque Festival. Notice all of the thigh meat. Notice all of the brown bodies. We wanted to show visible, brown, fat women being sexy and loving themselves and being unapologetic about it. So, as we started going with things, we found out about Jeezy's Juke Joint. Now, we didn't know that we were missing something until we went there. Jeezy's Juke Joint is an all-black burlesque event in Chicago, and we couldn't figure out what it was. And what it was is we were still the only people of color on stages. We went there and we got re-fired up, and we're like, fuck it, we're gonna keep going. So then we decided, since we're in Chicago, we should go to their festival too. Notice more thigh meat, even less clothing. And that's just how it started going. We started having our own shows. We started doing our own thing. Once we came back from Chicago, it went crazy. We had to have auditions. And there was the next iteration of us. Notice that our numbers almost tripled. We got almost up to 11 at one point. And this is how we were 80% of the time, half-dressed, being black, being fat, being brown, loving every minute of it, aggressively loving ourselves, right? Now, this is around the time that they started kind of killing black people every 15 minutes. Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, everybody. And we thought, we have this opportunity in this stage to have our bodies visible in a different way. We can be political with our art as well and still celebrate blackness. So we came up with a no-hate routine that we did on a 100-year-old Texas stage at the Paramount. 8 black, fat women with racial slurs on their tank tops, showing you what we have to go through, being visible, making you look. We got a standing ovation, and we got an award that night. Because, once again, people want to see themselves in the world. These women are the women that, it's the closest iteration to what we are now. We took the rocket fuel from that routine because it changed us and it changed our relationship with each other and our relationship with our audience. And our audience got bigger and our shows got bigger. And now we have sold out shows. We've sold out our shows. Every single show this season is sold out because people want to love themselves. They want to see other people loving themselves, and that's great. Who I really do it for, though, is her. That's my niece. I want my niece to see herself in the world. I want my niece to know that it's okay for her to be who she is and love her body at every fucking version of it, right? She is surrounded by women that show her that every day. These are the women that get to help me raise my niece. These beautiful, brown, fierce as fuck, unapologetic women, showing everybody else that you can love yourself, full stop. There's no but, there's no parentheses, there's no quote. You love yourself at every version, and that is what we are here to do. I did not think when I started Fat Bottom Cabaret that I would find my crew, and I did. I found these women that were looking for the same thing that I was looking for, that was looking to see themselves and fight that loneliness and that polarization when there aren't a lot of people that look like you. And so we're here, taking over the world one curve at a time.
Yeah. They ain't gonna like it. They ain't gonna like it. I be getting to the money. Everybody mad. Think I'm getting too much money. Everybody mad. Same old nigga from the block. Same old nigga with the clock. Same old nigga for the trap. Everybody hated on her, then he bounced right back. I be getting to the money. Everybody mad. Think I'm getting too much money. Everybody mad. Same old nigga from the block. Same old nigga with the clock. Same old nigga for the trap. Everybody hated on him, then he bounced right back.
What did they say about marriage? That you marry yourself, kind of?
The first thing I noticed about Ted's face was that he has a sort of chiseled nose, wide, thinnish type mouth, not a round face, but like a circle within a square, long neck.
The story of how Evan and I met is that my best friend was getting married and her mother was dating Evan.
She walked into the wedding party like she was walking onto a yacht, to quote the song, like she was a water bird stalking a pond looking for something to eat. And I'd never seen anybody enter a room like that.
I thought he was kind of a cowboy boot collecting carny huckster from Buda, Texas.
If I had to describe DJ's face to a police sketch artist, he's a caricature. This very handsome guy with these black art director glasses and the cowboy hat.
And Lana's very feminine, but also she has some sort of macho characteristics because she's very, very athletic. For me to become that feminine part of Lana is going to be probably the most difficult.
When I look at you as me, I appreciate your masculinity.
I was looking at features of Eliza and I was trying to make my face do that. I saw like details in a way that I'd never seen before.
He's very Texan in his swagger and the way he stands and the way he walks.
It's more about, I think, getting inside her head rather than getting inside her body.
When I imagine impersonating Ted, I would walk around the house while I brushed my teeth. Drives me fucking crazy. I would transfer my weight to my right foot and let my left heel come up off the ground and my left toe is a little bit pointing forward.
He always looks head on. His bottom lip and your chin comes forward and you kind of tuck
How
your...
can they go forward if they're going under?
When she was impersonating me, I felt like it was a simulation. I was like, I wonder if that's annoying when I do that, you know? But then I was like, if I am like that, that's pretty funny. Yeah, exactly.
I don't quite have it.
I know like her wounds and a lot of her things that really are deep pains to her. And I started thinking, oh, is that the way I would portray somebody, like through the knowledge of those things?
With such a gregarious, outgoing, social person, I tend to fight for my identity, and as a woman. So I'm always looking for my end of the deal. I'm kind of afraid that mild pettiness will show.
Both been through enough shit when we met that it was like just super honest. Like, here's me.
He and I have been through so much in our relationship, whether it's our children being so sick and, me with cancer and my breasts are gone, or parents dying. I mean, we're pretty raw.
I know that he adores me and that he loves me, and I love him with all my heart and soul. So I could never imagine him depicting me in a way that would be, it would probably be more beautiful than anything that I could ever imagine.
People come together to make this funny little team, and here's the dynamics of our team, and here's what you bring, and here's what I bring, and it's worth the work to keep the funny little unique team going.
When I look at you, costumed like me, I feel interest, but not particularly attraction.
Not really feeling it.
No.
No.
Oh, we don't swing that way.
It's making me lose my sexual drive a little bit.
Yeah. There's two things in this project that are very interesting to me. One is the exploration of how couples, a much more mixed gender, sometimes like they subvert the hierarchy, taking non-traditional roles, and within the thing it's fluid within that relationship. But I'm also interested in the other part of it, which is that we're in a time of gender fluidity where you see people coming out as trans and people questioning their gender identity and not being marginalized for doing that. What does it mean to subvert largely hetero relationships, but also this whole thing about like, what does gender fluidity look like in the context of this? That's some bullshit, wasn't it?
It's really frightening to look in the mirror in the morning after 20 years and just be like, holy shit, we're becoming each other.
It does help me see that maybe, I like being me, and I like him being him.
That's not convincing. I went way faster than that.
Hi everybody. We would like to introduce my new project, Engender Species. It's a project that explores gender relationships between heterosexual couples, but on their own and personal and intimate frame.
Although gender identity has been crucial to our culture, the complexity and fluidity of gender roles in relationship is uniquely personal and something that deserves attention. Gender ambiguity in entertainment has been around a long time, usually as some kind of lighthearted caricature. Who can forget Some Like It Hot? But more recently, the subject has become deadly serious. The film Boys Don't Cry took the idea of gender fluidity from comedy to tragedy. Astonishingly, to many of us, the politics surrounding the subject are still polarizing.
What's missing is how gender roles are experienced and negotiated in private. So I thought of developing a series of portraits where heterosexual couples should study their partner's body language, facial expression, and everything, and become one another, and then being photographed.
We worked with the amazing makeup artist Stephanie Kayabet, who used images of the couples in real life to plan her hair and makeup sessions.
In a show of bravery, we went first, or rather, Teresa went first. Her makeup session lasted 3.5 hours. She sent photos to friends in Portland who were really shocked. And we took that as a sign of success.
Rino's session took less time because no bald cap and no beard. He had to shave, of course, and it was the first time I'd ever seen him without his beard. That's when things got real. Would I still like him? Yes, I would. And Rino was especially happy with his session because for a brief magical time he had a full head of flowing blonde hair.
We invited 9 more couples, all trusting friends and members of the Austin creative community, and they participated in this project. Well,
Sue and Chris Lamb.
Well, it's not them.
Caroline Wright and Diego Garcia, Jana Sweck and Shay Little, Ron Pippin and Julie Faust Pippin, Steve Wyman and Emily Cowart.
And now you see Scott Crowan and Harkness, Gail Chauvin and Evan Boyles, DJ Stout and Lana McGilvray, Eliza Thomas and Ted Young, and of course us. Each makeup session lasted 2 to 4 hours, and the lighting and background were somehow consistent, even though they were adjusted occasionally to better fit people's features.
4 couples were selected by Italian filmmaker Roberto Badeau as the subject of a documentary about the project titled Me and You, which you've just seen the trailer for that. We created a trailer that we'll use to get funding to shoot more couples, hopefully in other countries, and ideally in completely different cultures. Like Saudi Arabia would be excellent, we think, if possible. And I'm co-producing the documentary with my art director partner, Charlotte Moore. The filmmaker wanted to, what?
Just skip it. Okay, these are Scott Crowan and Harkness. The participants reminisced about the time they first met, the first impression of each other. And when I asked how they felt about their experience, many reacted. And we all make that. Many reacted saying that couples end up looking the same, but we made that a little more realistic.
This is DJ and Lana, obviously. We think that for some, maybe it was a kind of therapy. We're not sure. That wasn't our intention. In any case, none of the couples argued about the way their companion portrayed them, and Rino was very happy that I impersonated him holding a martini. Ted Young and Eliza Thomas. A really touching moment in the documentary was when Ted said, and I paraphrase, "I know Eliza's struggles and dark places, and I thought, would I portray her based on that knowledge? Would that be fair?" And Eliza shared that when Ted walks around the house brushing his teeth, it drives her fucking crazy. Her words.
Okay, this is Shay Little and Jana Sweck. There was a significant height difference between the two in case, it was nothing that couldn't be fixed with a big pile of books. But, and let me just say what good sports all the couples were. Nobody really knew what to expect, but everybody was game to find out.
This is Caroline Wright and Diego Garcia. There was debate about whether or not Diego, as Caroline, should have visible chest hair. But Rino had promised that he would not use Photoshop unless absolutely necessary, and so we decided to keep it, and it was weirdly sexy, we thought. Do Sue and Tom. Sue and Chris, baby, do it. Just do Sue and Chris.
Well, we're not going to fit it.
I'll do it. This is Sue and Chris Lamb, who are mother and son and are only non-spouse participants. Sue has a perfectly good husband, but he was busy or something, so Chris stepped up. He seemed happy to do it, but we noticed that he left for Japan the next day. So was he? We don't know. Steve Wyman and Emily Cowart. Steve said later that he watched his wife transform into the spitting image of her late brother, whom he wasn't crazy about. And he shuddered at his own transformation. His son said he looked a lot like Dame Edna, the alter ego of Australian comic actor John Barry Humphries.
We are planning an exhibition in 2020, and date and place to be announced. The exhibition will include large prints and of the transformed couples and smaller images of the before pictures. In the meanwhile, you can follow us on Facebook on the page Engender Species. Thank you very much, and have a good night.
So I shoot a lot of direct on-camera flash. I like the stark form and the details. Flash etches like acid. And then I dodge the people in the back so that they're not lost in darkness. They're not murky in the back. This is Fun Fest in Auditorium Shores. Yeah, fun. This is fun. So this is back in Los Angeles in the 1979. It's not punk, but somebody saw my pictures and he said I should check out the punk scene. He says a lot of people banging on one another, smashing one another and stuff. I said, yeah, that's what I want. Where do I find these places? So I found it's not so much like a true violence, it's slam dancing, which is a ritualistic careening and crashing of bodies. It's truly photogenic. And this makes a good cover shot here. LA Punk in the 1980s, and all these pictures are from that time. So for me, it's about the compositions and the black and white tones. It's not really about documenting anything. And I was attracted to the action, not for its own sake, but for the compositions I could make out of it. This is Starwood. This is the Hong Kong Cafe. This was a Chinese restaurant downstairs and punk night upstairs in the banquet room. When I was hanging the film in the dryer, I saw this frame, and I decided that I would make punk an ongoing project right there and then. This is from the same night at the Hong Kong, the aftermath. It's not a real organized composition, but the lines are strong. By the way, the Hong Kong, not to be confused with Madame Wong's right around the corner, which featured the dreaded and despised new wave bands. So there are two approaches to photography. One is to get to know the people, make friends with them, and then you have your entree. And the other is forget about that. Just start shooting away, because your serious intent is not just your entree, but it is your carte blanche. The Café de Grand here in Hollywood. So for me, the photography is not about a connection between me and the subject. It's more about the sense of distance, the separation, which I find to be more trenchant than any phony posturing of like, oh, look how I became one with these people and I became one of them and all that stuff. This is a guy named Abel. I felt somebody pushing up on my butt, and he lifted me up onto the stage, to the side of the stage where I could get better shots. And so, that was cool. And then from there on, I did start to develop a sense of when it's better to shoot from the pit and when it's better to shoot from the stage. This is the Basis Hall riot, in which, you see this cop, he's got his foot on the back of the kid like he just took down an elk or something, And both cops here with a classic LAPD mustache. This is during the Daryl Gates era. One thing I had in common with the punks was definitely did not like authority. If I believed in what goes around comes around, I find it in the juxtaposition of this picture with the one before it. This is the Polish Hall riot, and here this motorcycle cop got his foot run over. Circle jerks on the car, but actually Black Flag concert. This is Henry Rollins' first concert as a member of Black Flag. I got the slam dancers in front, the band in the back, and this is the Cuckoo's Nest in Orange County, which was a real surf punk stronghold. And the shows were not always that well organized. Sometimes between bands, it was actually boring. Here's an equipment repair break with Black Flag. That's Chuck Dukowski on bass. It's also from Polish Hall. And this is Mugger, who was the roadie for Black Flag. And he got that nickname when he was 4 years old. He lived in poverty with the band for years, sleeping around on floors, eating dog food, but they gave him some share in their stock of their record label. He sold it, invested in the tech boom, and became a millionaire. This is X scene of X at the Vex. The Vex was a real true punk club upstairs at an abandoned storefront in East LA. It was cramped, dark inside, no ventilation. The sweat, the humidity, just from the slam dancers itself, it was great. This is Greg Hetson of Circle Jerks. And sometimes just a straight-on, simple, portrait works. And after a while, I got to appreciate the bands, Circle Jerks, Black Flag, Adolescence, Fear. Now, sometimes the violence was real. Typically, it would be an outsider, a non-punk would be on the edge of the crowd, and then he would get picked on as a scapegoat. Then there was a rift between those who would, the punks who would do this kind of thing, and those who would abhor it. A punk was not always so grim and ominous, as sometimes just goofy and crazy and tender, and the bonds of friendship were apparent. This is the Starwood in West Hollywood just before one of the shows. And this is as close as you can get to photographing slam dance without getting trampled under it. I loved it. I loved photographing it. Sometimes the new punks would want to mess with me, and the ones that knew me, the guys that knew me from before, they would step up and say, you want to mess with a photographer, you come through me first. So that was great. So this is Polish Hall again. They really did a number on that place. I like this as the last image. It reminds me of Looney Tunes and Porky Pig busting his head out through the drum saying, "That's all, folks." So thank you all very much for being here tonight. It was great to see you.
I wanted to start with this photo. This is a photo a good friend of mine took, and I didn't know that she was taking it. And people tell me when I'm working, I'm really sucked into my work. I don't respond to anything. And this is a case where she took the photo, and I went on for about 20 more minutes photographing fire. I was just mesmerized by it, and I think it says a lot about the way I work. This is my first cat photo in a presentation. This is my first muse, Muffy, and I took this photo when I was 5. And shout out to Muffy, rest in peace. Muffy was a diva, and I used to photograph her and dress her up and put wigs on her and hats, and then I would collage it with words. And then I found friends to do this with. And so these are works that I made when I was, most of them are when I was 14. The one on the upper left is when I was older. But it's the same type of thing where I'm going into the dark room and I'm working with refracted light, holding up filters, finding ways to mess with the photography. And back in those days, I shot with a broken camera that I used for like 10 years. This was the first piece. This is a 6 foot by 9 foot mural that deals with why we fight by looking at the European bullfight culture. And it was a monumental piece for me because it was one of the first pieces where I really used color to tell the story. Then I wanted to put this in because around this time, photography was changing a lot, and all of a sudden with smartphones, we all had dark rooms in our pocket, and I was interested in that because I had grown up really being into a little bit of kitsch, so sticker machines and photo booths, and I liked that all of a sudden I had access to a lot of tools in the smartphone. And I'm always doodling, I'm always working. This is just at a birthday party. I just like the way that she was running through the bubbles. And I'm always just kind of making things, and then I'll send it to the people afterwards. I liked that I had all these different ways that I could affect the photo and manipulate it. To me, living in Austin has affected that by walking around and seeing all the real estate advertisements all the time. And so there's this weird mixed time states of current state and future projected states of Austin. And so you see these images of buildings that aren't there next to the images of the buildings that are there.
This is a construction site that I saw walking on the High Line in New York, and that I just became mesmerized with. And I shot for 4 hours, and I just shot and shot and shot and shot through different lights. And but I really liked the transparencies. Around the same time, I had been playing with acrylics on my kitchen window, just stacking them up and looking at the way the light would come through. Right after that, I made this piece, and this is directly collaging construction materials with screenshots of smartphones, and actually combining and collaging the iconography and the materials from construction sites with smartphones. To me, this was a significant piece because it felt a little bit like the death of photography as I knew it. I had developed a toxicity to photography. I couldn't go in the darkroom anymore, and I could barely touch the paper. At the same time, photography was changing so quickly. Everyone had a camera, and there was a million different ways to influence it. I started to think about this movement. Just as an artist, I'm interested in when mass movements happen, and I started to think about it in terms of if a tree falls, but thinking about it like an emoji tree. So thinking about perception and existence in our visual virtual culture, thinking about if we experience all these things on our screens and we're not there, did it actually happen? Do we actually live it? So thinking about it in this broader philosophical context, and also the isolation of that. And so I also was interested in the way that and where this came from, this need to affect the way that we represent ourselves in our worlds, and that impulse to filter and to really do different things to change the way we represent ourselves. And so I started playing with filters, doing handheld filtering. And I also was really interested in the icons, these sort of subliminal forms that we live with. And so I was super interested in the text box from text messaging, the history there with comic books and cartoons, the sort of the chat bubble or the thought bubble. This is just some doodles I did of my friend, who I imagine he was thinking of the Cardinals. And then I started to make these life-size text boxes, and I started to work with acrylic, plexiglass, because to me it was very similar to the darkroom experiences I had had growing up, and the ability to refract the light. I also liked that it created a stage for other people to go in and immerse in the colors and really experience these life-size sets. And this is the light at the Austin Central Library. And I like that. To me, it was almost like a giant dark room where people could go and step into it, take their own photos and videos. This is a large installation I did at the Long Center that was 111 feet, and the installations have gotten a lot bigger this past year in particular. And I love that they've gotten bigger and that they're more public, because I've gotten to work with a lot more people. And so my practice went from being more private to being able to work with some awesome organizations here, Vault Fine Art Services and the library, City of Austin, Big Medium, and I love working with everyone. I especially love that these artworks exist out there, because the community, I feel like, they go in and they experience it and they photograph, they send me pictures, and I like that it has this life out there. This was a cover on the Austin American Statesman that made my heart feel huge, because I felt like it had accomplished everything I'd ever wanted as an artist, to feel like people were being elevated by a work that I had put out there. And this is me sitting in it. So yeah, thank you all for having me here tonight. And I hope you go and play in these works and enjoy the light and the colors. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Griffon Ramsey, an internationally competitive artist, set designer, event planner, entrepreneur, and single mom with a chainsaw. I've been a wood sculptor for the last 8 years. Everyone always asks me how I got started doing this, so let me tell y'all, and then I'll just send them the link from now on. I grew up in an official ghost town in Oregon called Kings Valley, which is about 80 miles southwest of Portland. It had been mostly abandoned. The old grist mill that created the town was in ruins. The post office was closed before I was born and had blackberries growing over it. It was intensely beautiful out there, but pretty isolated and lonely. I come from a family of loggers and blue-collar workers. Many of them are very creative. My grandfather was a wood whittler, and the other one wrote poetry, and my dad can make anything. They told me you can't make a living as an artist, and when I asked my dad about it recently, he said, well, that's what his guidance counselor told him. To be fair, this is before you could connect your Instagram account to your Shopify page and promote it with a Facebook ad. I was about 6 years old the first time I remember feeling the creative spirit. It was like my hands were restless, and I didn't know what was happening, only that I needed to make something. But I didn't have any skills yet, so I made a sleep mask out of a sock, elastic, and a bunch of buttons. It was totally hideous, but I did it. It existed, and after that I made a bunch of things. And I didn't really make an identity out of it until I discovered that I could have another purpose, which is attracting friends. And by making myself useful, I got invited in on the groups. I would help them with their projects, and yearbook covers, comics for our jokes, and I have found my place among my peers. When I was 16 years old, I left home for the first time and spent a year studying in France. That experience totally changed my outlook on life and the outside world, and it made two more defining discoveries, which is I wasn't bound to the world I'd known, I could leave it, and I really feel like myself when I'm on the road. I went on many wild adventures, and working from place to place, I learned how to cook. I was an aimless wanderer, just living for the stories, between Greyhound trips and hitchhiking. The downside to constant travel is that you get a lot of ideas and inspiration, but you don't have any way to do anything about it. And so I didn't really make anything then, except for like 1 million pizzas. 18 years ago, I moved to San Marcos. Because I graduated from Willemon High School in Oregon, I was eligible for a grant created by a forward-thinking logging baron, Rex Clemens. He was an early adopter of replanting, and he didn't want all of the kids in town to end up working in the mills. And so the logging money gave me the ability to go to Texas State and get my BFA in technical theater. My professors recommended me to theaters in Austin, and I got my first gigs designing and building sets and costumes. Ultimately, that wasn't enough money, and not enough people saw it. And so you wouldn't think a degree in theater would really be that helpful, but it taught me really useful things like telling stories, making something out of nothing, and public speaking. So in 2004, I met my ex, and I made myself useful by helping his production company, Rooster Teeth, create their first online content. I wrote a popular webcomic, self-published 5 graphic novels, and I was a panelist at San Diego Comic-Con. I helped create web series and reach #1 on the front page of Reddit for my design work. And when I left the company, I had absolutely no idea what was next. Did not expect to start carving. I needed a place to direct my people who had started following me at Rooster Teeth, and so I launched a YouTube channel. And at the time Gears of War 3 was coming out, there was a chainsaw gun in the game, and I wanted to time it with the release to get the most eyes on my new channel. And so I thought it would be a cool prop to hold aside. I had no idea I'd become a chainsaw carver. But I fucking love it. And I've never had so much fun creating, and just the amount of energy the people around me bring to it, it really has kept me motivated over the last 8 years. I've become known in my field for my interest in fan art and pop culture, and my self-produced videos have brought me some interesting opportunities in entertainment. Recently was on Adam Savage's, he's from Mythbusters, he has a digital series called Tested, and then I've got a permanent installation at Nickelodeon's campus. I've carved for Titmouse Animation Studios, and recently DreamWorks showed my work at Television Academy in LA, among other things. Carving has struck a chord in me for a couple of reasons. The first being my love for travel. It's really taken me all over the world. I've carved all over the US, Canada, France, Germany, England, Scotland, Slovakia, and Japan so far. And I was invited to carve in Russia next year, and next month I'll be live carving in London. A large percentage of my business has come from live performance. I travel around doing demonstrations and create branded content for different businesses. Stihl Incorporated, the lawn care company, has sponsored several of my projects, provides me with equipment, and has hired me many times at the national, regional, and local levels. There have been some cool opportunities past year to do some really big, more public works. I love making things larger, more complicated, but although I've hired a lot of people over the years, I've kind of felt a little bit on my own. And so I would love to do something bigger, but I would like to have friends help and be involved. Last November, I was fortunate enough to be the first woman sculptor to work on the ice temple in the high Tatras Mountains of Slovakia, designed by Adam Bakos. I was one of 17 ice sculptors, and we used nearly 2,000 blocks of ice to create this 40-foot structure. And it stayed up for a few months. It was hosted music events, weddings, and laser light shows. And between 2012 and 2016, I rented a grungy little warehouse at 3rd and Chacon, fixed it up, built a stage, and opened up the Fort ATX, an art and music venue. I joined the East Austin Studio Tour, hosted several South by Southwest parties, fashion shows, theater, and art shows. I started learning how to work with sponsors and organize events for the public. And now, I would really been dreaming about creating a new place, and my good friend Jody and I are searching for forest land to develop into a creative glamp ground. It would host world-class carving competition, art and music events, workshops. In the off-season, it would host creative residencies. The forest would become enchanted with the artifacts of each creative happening. And so, as much as chainsaw sculpting has created so much joy in my life and filled me with passion, I don't think I'm totally done discovering my life's purpose. What I liked about hosting was being able to hold space for more than just me and what I can do with my two hands. I recognize this restless feeling. It's the same one I've had since I was 6 years old. New things are brewing, and I like working with others. So if you're interested, please see me after the show.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. And I'm feeling good. What happens when you blend a closeted gay vice president of a savings and loan and a bipolar, really talented art teacher? You get a weirdo like me. You get someone who was raised in a small town after her parents, surprise, surprise, divorced at 9 months, when her mom found out that her dad was having an affair with a Methodist minister that married them. It's a very Days of Our Lives story that kind of worked out. And I grew up in the tomato capital of the world in this tiny town in East Texas behind the Pine Curtain, where if you wanted to get out, you needed to be a country singer or an athlete. And at 15, I went to audition for this performing arts high school in Dallas. And I got in, and the night before I auditioned, I was told I needed to learn a jazz song, and I'd never heard a jazz song. So I listened to the song Summertime, memorized it, sang it the next day, and Nora Jones and I were assigned to a jazz trio. And that's how it all started. When I was living in Dallas, I would go to school at this art school from 9 to 4, and then I would work all night singing in every club, singing for Ann Richards' birthday party. I was hired by T. Boone Pickens' third wife, Nelda Kane, who wanted to be a country singer. And so she came and auditioned backup singers, and I ended up singing around the world at every state fair and worked my way up at 15 to be Alan Jackson's backup singer. And then I ended up winning this Garland Opry competition with Leanne Rimes and sang more country music until I got to sing for my musical hero, Kraeger Johnson, at 19, and he hired me to be in Conspirare. Conspirare is a world-class professional choral ensemble, and I've been singing with them now for 20 years. All of my life should be titled, "I'm not qualified to do any of it," but I'm still doing it. And that includes winning a Grammy with Conspirare. We were nominated 8 times. And then I got to meet my husband. I saw his picture on the side of a bus in Austin and decided I was gonna marry him. And 5 years later, my agent puts me in front of him to audition, and he hires me to sing with the Symphony, and I ended up hiring him. And in another theme of my life, we have this wonderful son, and in things that shouldn't actually work and don't work on paper, I have him, and 6 weeks later, I'm singing on the Austin Opera stage, and he's backstage, and everybody's holding him and caring for him. In another one of my worlds, I was the creator of this show, this radio show called Icons of Broadway, and I have a co-host, Gregory Cash-Durham. It was a situation where I was teaching voice at UT and in their musical theater department, and Ann Hume-Wilson talked me into starting this radio show, which is now in its 5th season. This is a picture from another job I wasn't qualified to do, which was produce the largest show that has ever been produced at the Long Center. It had 300 members in the cast. It was the Bernstein Mass. It included a full orchestra, an adult chorus, a children's chorus, a rock band, a dance troupe, 21 soloists. The list goes on and on and on. And it was the most successful production ever produced there. We sold out and were able to do a free show for students, and we were able to actually give away $130,000 to nonprofits who had helped participate with the overage from ticket sales. And all of that happened because I started this company, Merrick Strategies, when my husband said he had a dream and no one would do it. So this company that I get to be the CEO of, we produce shows, and we produce things that people usually think can't be done, which may mean a Broadway tour. It means something like in December, we're producing Icons of Broadway, the radio show Holiday Spectacular. I get to work with groups like the Umlauf, and we're producing a burlesque ball in January where we get to create a sexy Cirque du Soleil where I'll get to come down from the ceiling along with these amazing silks performers. In my life, I also get to creatively marry for-profit clients. Like I have a client, Dr. White, who's a plastic surgeon, and Dr. Wallace, who's a dentist, and we're merging their businesses and doing an entire web series where we talk about self-esteem and what it means to think about your body and also do things for your body that are for you and not for others. And all of this crazy life wouldn't be possible without my family. That's the reason. I thought I'd close by singing just a tiny little bit from Conspirare's show, Considering Matthew Shepard, that Kraeger Johnson wrote, and we have toured all over with. What could be the song where begin again? Who could meet us there? Where might we begin? From the shadows climb, rise to sing again. Where could be the joy how do we begin? Never our despair, never the least of us, never turn away,